You're listening to the Tan Talk Radio Network.
From Sunburst Media Productions and Refuge Productions, this is Spectrum 360. Welcome. Your Spectrum 360 co-hosts are Mark Skogman and Bruce Wright. Spectrum 360 broadcasts live weekly on Mondays at 11 p.m. and online anytime via podcast. Thank you for listening for the next hour. Spectrum 360 is progressive and features political talk and humor and also the arts and popular culture. Spectrum 360 starts right now. Let's get to work. Okay, and on this program for Monday, the 16th of September 2013, segment 1 is going to be a live telephone interview with Kathleen Rumpf, and Bruce has more information about that. Bruce, more information about that segment?
Yes, many may know or may not know this Saturday is World Peace Day, and I thought it'd be interesting to have a local guest who is involved with the Catholic Worker, of which I'm also involved with. She's been involved for many years with it, including spending some time with Dorothy Day herself, who was the founder of the Catholic Worker. And she has some stories she's going to share with us about peace and different actions she's been involved in.
Very good. And then in segment 2, we are going to have a recorded speech or lecture by Greg Palast. Greg Palast is a reporter for the Guardian newspapers and is well known for his books. Oh man, there's so many of them. The first one was The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. And
which was about the whole 2000 debacle in Florida,
partially,
among other things.
And Armed Madhouse and others. And the latest one was Billionaires and Bandits, I believe. And I've got a copy of that. He was live for a lecture on election reform at the Madison, Wisconsin Democracy Convention. That was a great event. It was in early August, and that was recorded Saturday, the 10th of August, in Madison, Wisconsin, at the Madison Area Technical College that we used for the Democracy Convention. Very interesting. We're going to have two parts, one part before the bottom of the hour, and then after the bottom hour, we're going to come back with the second part. Very interesting, animated, and rather humorous as well. Greg is known for his humor. I had the pleasure of having dinner with him in Madison, and he just cut us up, man. He's very, very interesting. And after that, for segment 3, we are going to have a discussion about the other September 11th. September 11th, 1973, when the fascist coup that brought Augusto Pinochet to power happened in Chile. And one of the victims of the Augusto Pinochet regime, who was Victor Jara. Victor Jara, that's spelled, last name is spelled J-A-R-A, but it's pronounced Jara. He was a well-known musician and brilliant theater director in Chile that was killed by the Pinochet regime. We're going to have a retrospective on his death and the whole situation involving September 11th, 1973. So that's the program for tonight. We're going to go right to our first segment. We're hoping that Kathleen Rumpf is called in. And I'm going to go to you, Bruce. Take it away, and let's speak.
Yes, before we go any further, though, we want to thank the following organizations and businesses that are supportive of Spectrum 360. Again, If you'd like to find out more about advertising with us, you can call us at 727-278-1547. And just to remind you, this show is also simulcast on AM 1350 and AM 1400 in Plant City and Dade City, respectively, as well as this show will be podcast, including the last few weeks' shows, which are already on there. You can also listen online at www.tantalk1340.com. So really quickly, we want to thank the following organizations. We want to thank The Refuge. They can be reached at 727-278-1547. The Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign. Reach them at economichumanrights.org. Veterans for Peace, Chapter 119 in St. Petersburg. Check them out on Facebook. Gennaro's Coffee House, our favorite coffee house, 1047 Central Avenue North.
Great smoothies,
That's
man.
right. And you can reach them at 727-202-6956. They're at 1047 Central Avenue. Every Monday night, they feature documentary films at 8 p.m. From St. Pete for Peace. And every Saturday night, you don't want to miss Poetry with Mona Lisa. Yes, not the picture, but the poet. Every Saturday night at 8:30.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be very animated if it was a picture.
Yeah, she does not. She does not look like the famous portrait at all.
Not at all. And then we'd like to thank Relax at Home licensed massage therapists.
Like
you
I
can
always
call
yes.
Patricia at 813-784-7485. My Place in Recovery, which is a recovery program for recovering addicts and alcoholics. You can reach them at 727-244-0427. And, of course, the local Catholic Worker, which we're about to talk to Kathleen Rumpf, who's a part of the Catholic Worker, as well as I am also a part of this. And then, of course, the League of Revolutionaries for a New America, LRNA, that's LRNA.org. But without further ado, I want to get to our guest just to give you a little bit of background on Kathleen. She is a very good friend of mine. She has been involved in the Catholic Worker for many, many years, including doing some actions, civil disobedience actions, protesting war, protesting torture and violence. Spent some time in jail with the Berrigan brothers. You might remember Daniel Berrigan and his brother, who burned their draft cards famously and burned a whole bunch of draft cards in the famous Cantonville 9 incident during the Vietnam War.
Being jailed with the Berrigan brothers, that's kind of a red badge of courage, don't you think?
I think so. And then also she spent some time in jail with Father Roy Bourgeois, who is the one who's organized the School of the Americas protests.
Yes.
Protesting torture, incidentally enough. We're going to be talking a little bit about that later as it relates to Augusto Pinochet and what happened in Chile, and just a whole host of other things that she has been involved in. And we're pleased to have her here. Kathleen, are you there?
Yes, good evening.
Well, thank you for being on, Kathleen. You and I, of course, know each other quite well. Mark, I don't think has met you formally, but I'm sure he will. This Saturday is what is commonly called World Peace Day. It's September 21st. Every year it's celebrated or looked at, and we thought it would be really important with all the things going on in the world, plus anniversaries of things, not just 9/11, but also the original 9/11, which was around the whole Chilean overthrow of Salvador Allende.
Yes, that was September 11th, 1973.
That's right. And I know you've been involved in some peace actions, and you're also part of the Catholic Worker. Real briefly, tell us what the Catholic Worker is, first of all.
The Catholic Worker is a social movement, and it came to being in the 1930s. Dorothy Day and Peter Moore co-founded, but it's really about living your faith or your beliefs. And people live in community, which enables them to survive and give witness at the same time. And often living right with the homeless. There's different houses, and more than 120, some in other countries. And it's basically performing the works of mercy by sheltering the homeless, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, burying the dead. All those wonderful things that people hopefully do in their lives. But we also ask, what makes us different? And a movement more is by asking the question, why are they hungry? Why are they homeless? And once you start asking the questions, why is it there's always money for war?
Very good question.
Yes. Very simple, but very, very, very loaded. And I have been arrested more than 100 times for peace. I also have 5 felonies for peace. So
100 times? Did I hear that correctly?
Well, I usually say yes, that it's not enough. But,
Wow.
and having lived on the East Coast and upstate New York and Baltimore, I was in a close proximity to many, many wonderful witnesses and actions and marches.
Well, go ahead.
Wow.
And you know, I started out by moving to the Bowery in New York City and living right with the homeless for many years, and it radicalized me because I had never met a hippie or a vegetarian before I moved to the Catholic Worker from St. Petersburg, Florida.
Wow.
And so I was very naive, and once I figured it out, and once I saw reality, it changed my life, and I had to start asking questions, and it was no longer enough to, cry myself to sleep in despair of the many suffering that we served. But I knew I had to leave. I didn't have much, but I had a bed, and I had to start witnessing in places where the injustice stemmed from, and that was the Pentagon, the State Department, the Blight House.
The Blight House, I like that.
Yes, yeah. So, it's a long story. Probably take a whole show just to tell you my journey to doing what I did. But for me, my entire passion comes from having witnessed the suffering of the homeless and what they go through. And when I say homeless, I also mean the vets. I also mean, typically when I first moved to New York City in the early 70s, it was mostly what people called derelicts and men from the road. But especially during the Reagan years, the face of the homeless became everyone.
Well, yes, and about 25% of the homeless population in the U.S. is military veterans.
Yes, shameful.
Shameful.
Very shameful. So,
Yes.
so Kathleen, tell us a little bit more about some of the peace actions you've been involved in. I know we've talked about it some, and one of the organizations or, I guess, coalitions of people that you've been involved with is the Plowshares. Tell us a little bit about that. I know a lot of the arrests that you have been involved in have some bearing with the Plowshares. So tell us a little bit about some of the peace actions and your experiences with Father Ray Bourgeois and, of course, with the Berrigan brothers. And for that matter, Dorothy Day.
Sure. Well, I think I'd start with 1983 and the beginning of 1983, after having been to many marches, especially concerning Central America and the war in El Salvador and Guatemala and all that was going on at that time. I went to Washington by myself and pulled a sheet of cardboard out of a garbage can, and I wrote on it, it is a sin to build a nuclear weapon. And I spent 3 days and 3 nights alone on the steps of the Pentagon, which was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, because on so many levels, and I just know I don't have too much time, but I can say that, it was just amazing to be there, waking up in the morning, being awoken at night, having people screaming at me, "You think this is a joke? What the hell are you doing here?" And just, the people coming to work in the morning, 24 hours a day, including the generals. I was at the parade ground entrance, and there would be buses of soldiers, and I got to smile at them and say good morning. And the generals, the first day would kind of look at me strange, and I kind of looked at them strange too.
Yes,
But
and obviously what you were doing was no joke. You might have had opposing points of view, but you were just as serious as the military personnel there about what you were doing.
Yes, I was. In fact, the soldiers told me that if I had been, the general actually said, one general said if I'd been a good soldier, if I'd been on the right side. But they came to understand that I was there as a gesture of peace and out of concern for the homeless. And I wanted to talk to them about where money was being spent and where it wasn't, with my brothers and sisters in the streets. And after the third day, I was getting ready to leave, and I had started weeping because one person who was consistently just very awful to me said something bad. And so this one of the nice generals walked up into work and saw that I was crying, and he said, don't worry. He was trying to make me feel better. And I said, please let me come in, and please let me talk to you all just for a little while about why I'm here. And I saw him hedge, and he hedged. And then he said, well, listen, honey, he said, "There's 36,000 people who work in here, and we all know you're out there." And from that action, that was a very powerful moment. And I really developed some really deep personal connections with the people there, and making the distinction between, evil and what people were doing, going to work, and, not judging. But I went from that to later hammering on a B-52 at Griffith Air Force Base, and that's, I think Bruce mentioned, the plowshare movement. And somebody like me is typically not going to ever do something like that. But I was so compelled by my work with the homeless that, and to put in context, in 1983 there was such a fear of a nuclear war, and it was top of the news many days. There was always something going on that made people live in fear, and I really didn't fear the bomb dropping. And when I did go on trial, I told the jury and the judge that for me, my fear wasn't about the bombs dropping, that it was that I saw people dropping every day and freezing to death in the streets, and that the money was being spent, and people living in such fear, and then to have the poverty we're having in the United States, which is unacceptable. And I got to ask Mother Teresa, once. I told her about the day that I was on at the Blight House and being arrested on behalf of the homeless, and she was inside having lunch with Ronald Reagan. And I said to her,
"Really?"
Yes. And this was just it just happened. It wasn't anything I knew about, but I found out later that she had been having lunch with Ronald Reagan. And when I did meet her, I said, Mother Teresa, I said, I was outside getting arrested, and you were inside having lunch with Ronald Reagan, and I was always horrified, Mother Teresa, that you opened houses here in America, coming from India, a third world country, where the need was so great. And I said, and the need is so great here, too, but we have the resources. And instead of having lunch with Ronald Reagan, or while you were having lunch with Ronald Reagan, I wished you had said to him, why don't you take care of your poor? You certainly have the resources. And I was
that
you both had your missions that day, and again, they were different missions, but I think you both made a valuable contribution that day in your own ways.
Yes, and
yes, absolutely. Although, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, there's so much to talk to you about, and I definitely want to have you on again. I know we have to go to another segment, but I just want to say, again, thank you for all your work and commitment to justice, and everyone who's involved with the Catholic Worker. I'm a member, or not a member, but I live with the Catholic Worker community as well. I'm part of it. And if people want to know more about the Catholic Worker itself, they can go on a Facebook page we have now called the Society of St. Gemma Galgina Catholic Worker House.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. St. Gemma is the patron saint, by the way, of the homeless and unemployed, and you can check that out on Facebook to learn more about the Catholic Worker locally, or go to 727-278-1547. That's our number, and we can tell you where the house is. We hang out together frequently throughout the week, have meals together. We share our food with the hurting, and Kathleen has been a part of this amazing work for many, many years, and I'm honored to have you on here. There's so much more we could talk to you about, and we hope to have you on again. And I just want to thank you for calling us, and look forward to talking to you again.
Sure, and I just would encourage people to look up, the plowshare movement and use technology. Just look up plowshare movement on the computer. Look up the Catholic Worker, too, because I certainly can't cover or do anything justice. Even though my life is about justice, I can't do this justice in 10 minutes. So thank you.
Well, thank you again, Kathleen, and we'll talk to you soon. I'm sure I'll see you at one of our meetings very soon. That was Kathleen Rumpf with the Catholic Worker Movement, and we have another segment to go to now, and that's an interview or a an interview with Greg Palast.
Yes, we're going to move to our next section. our next segment, and that's going to be some fun. Greg Palast is very entertaining, and he's a lot of fun. He really is. And we're going to be hearing from him in some very interesting ways. And what I want to do now is just introduce this briefly, what we're doing here. And this speech by Greg Palast, lecture actually, was given at the Democracy Convention in Madison, Wisconsin. The Democracy Convention was actually held at the Madison Area Technical College building, which was right across the street, coincidentally, from where the Veterans for Peace National Convention was being held, right across the street in a hotel right there in the same vicinity. It was a very interesting group of people. And then also, in that same hotel, there was a Progressive Democrats of America event featuring the great journalist John Nichols. So it was a very interesting few days. This was from Saturday, the 10th of August at the Democracy Convention. And this is a brief synopsis of the lecture that he gave. And this was also a panel discussion that he participated in. We're going to have other segments from this panel discussion. Just for your information, the plenary session that he spoke at was entitled Representative Democracy Plenary, The Fight of Our Lives. And it included Mike McCabe, Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party U.S. presidential candidate in 2012 and also, I believe, 2008. Correct, Bruce? Yeah, yes?
No, I think just 2012.
Okay. And also, Cindy Sheehan was on the panel, Greg Palast himself, Bob Fitzrakis, who's a newspaper editor and a very interesting person, and others as well. So we'll be hearing from them on future segments. And this is the setup that they basically had for that segment of the Democracy Convention. We face an unprecedented crisis in American democracy. Attacks against community self-government, undermining of government accountability, the reign of big money over representative politics, total lack of transparency in how we process our own votes, and a chokehold on the electoral system by two major parties increasingly under the control of nefarious corporate interests. How did we get here, and how do we get out? Leading democracy activists discover the need for a citizen-driven democracy movement to bring our society back from the brink. So that was a brief synopsis of the type of speech that Greg Palast gave that day. And he's very funny, very personable, and I've met him multiple times. Great guy. And we're going to go to the interview now and see what he has to say about elections and election integrity.
In November of 2000, in fact, I got in trouble because I was in London working for BBC TV. I got a couple discs at my desk, and they are the names of the felons, the criminals, and ne'er-do-wells that were removed from the Florida voter rolls in the election of 2000. So I cracked those discs, went through them, and found names like Mrs. Bobby Moore, who was removed because Robert Moore of Ohio had committed a crime. And he committed the crime in 2014. So Catherine Harris could reach into the future and find the bad guys. There are 56,000 names. You might not you'd be shocked to find out, I bet, that most of them had BLA next to their names, black. Almost all were D for, I don't know what party that is, and everyone. I asked the Attorney General of Florida, so how many of these ne'er-do-wells, you go to jail if you're a felon illegally voting. How many did you arrest? How many of these felons have you grabbed? After all, you got their names and addresses. He says, well, yeah, I looked at the list and we found 6. Wow. But actually, probably not, just probably not. And there were no convictions. 56,000 people, mostly African Americans, lost their vote. George Bush won the presidency in Florida by 537 votes. It was a racial coup d'etat. Okay? And then, okay, all right, give them one. 2004, I get a bunch of emails from Karl Rove's office. He sent me his confidential email. Oh, he didn't mean to. He sent it to GeorgeWBush.org, he meant to send it to GeorgeWBush.com. He went to .org, owed by my friend John Wooden. It was a mistake, you know. And it said return it to him. don't the confidential return them, and so I did. I looked at them first. Okay. Thousands of names, and they call them caging lists. Here's another caging list. I looked at the caging list. I went to the Republican Party and said, "What's all these names here? What's this caging list?" They said, "Oh, it's our donors." And I said, "But this entire list is from the homeless shelter in State Street, Jackson." We can let them lick the plates at the $500 plate. And there was another list. Here's what they were doing. They were sending letters. Caging is this. Bobby Kennedy and I were investigating this. Rolling Stone. They were sending letters to 700,000 voters and when those letters came back undelivered, they would challenge a vote, say these are...
All right, that's a segment with Greg Palast. And we're going to bring another segment after the bottom of the hour. We're going to go to a little bit of news and a few commercial messages for you. And we'll come back with a longer segment with Greg Palast. We do want to give a shout out to a couple listeners tonight. John Alexander and Lauren Hallahan are listening. We want to recognize those great folks.
And
Bruce, you have something to say?
Yes, and also my good friend Patricia. Actually, there's a few others whose names I can't remember, but glad you're listening in, and we always love to hear from our audience.
Yes, and remember, this is Spectrum 360 with Mark Skogman and Bruce Wright, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes with a lot more Greg Palast. Thank you for listening. Keep tuned.
NBC News Radio, I'm Melissa Rayberger. Suspected Washington Navy Yard gunman Aaron Alexis had access to the base through his work as a contractor with a legitimate ID card. 12 people were killed. Police then killed the alleged shooter. Tonight, the D.C. police chief says there's no indication of there having been a second gunman. Today's shootings add to a long list of similar events. NBC's Tom Costello has more on that.
We are reminded of recent mass shootings, 26 dead. Last year at Sandy Hook Elementary, 6 at a Sikh temple in Wisconsin, 12 in Aurora, 6 in Tucson, 13 at Fort Hood, 32 killed at Virginia Tech, and now 12 here in Washington.
Flags at the U.S. Capitol will be flown at half staff until sunset on Friday in honor of those killed in the shooting at the Washington Navy Yard. Government data shows unemployment for the lowest income families has toppled 21%. That nearly matches the rate for all workers during the Great Depression. This is NBC News Radio.
We're talking to Eric Serene, who's been with Bill Dawson at Best Services for 27 years. They're the official air conditioning service of the Tan Talk Radio Network for more than 20 years. We all have air conditioners, and when it gets hot, there's a lot of problems with them because they haven't turned them on for a long time. Why should they call Best Services, Bill?
We provide 24-hour service, and obviously our guys have the experience and the expertise to provide quality service, and we're known for our honesty, integrity. You know, a lot of people could say that, but
no, that's really important.
It really is.
We're talking to Eric Serene with Bill Dawson at Best Services. They have 24-hour emergency service. Here's how you reach them. In Pinellas, it's 727-773-0151. In Pasco, the number is 842, also 727-842-3357. Let me give you their website, bestserviceshbac.com. bestserviceshbac.com.
For all your home repair needs, call Ed's Handyman Services at 727-224-8681. For example, toilets, faucet, door locks, and much, much more. Impeccable quality work and reliable real-time service at an astonishing affordable price. Ed provides a clean, safe work environment from start to finish. Licensed, bonded, and insured, Ed guarantees all his work. So call Ed now at 727-224-8681.
McCullough Water Services, locally family-owned and operated since 1975.
They're committed to providing the best bottled water delivered in the new worry-free BPA bottles. Call today, 1-800-351-2541, or visit our website, McCulloughWater.com. For your bottled water introductory special offer of 4 free 5-gallon bottles of water, free 2 months of cooler rental, and 2 cases of half-liter single-serve. Absolutely free when you start regular home or office delivery. Hard water, rusty water, bad tasting or smelly water, no problem. McCullough Water carries a full line of water treatment systems for sale or rent to solve any water problem. For great water service in Citrus, Hernando, and Pasco counties, call 1-800-351-2541. That's 1-800-351-2541.
McCullough Water Services, for the best.
Here's Downtown Dave for the Three Oaks Cafe, 1575 South Fort Harrison in Clearwater.
For a spectacular breakfast or lunch, we recommend the Three Oaks Cafe, 1575 South Fort Harrison in Clearwater. The food is terrific, the price is right, and the service the best. That's the Three Oaks Cafe, open every day from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., 1575 South Fort Harrison in Clearwater. Dine today at the Three Oaks Cafe.
Join us Saturday mornings for Dispatch Radio.
8 to 9 every morning on Saturdays. We can give you caught up on everything that's been happening during the week. We can hit you with all the big headlines, obviously, in the U.S. and some of the things that are going on, obviously, NSA surveillance and IRS scandal, some of the things that you'll see in the paper. But we also try to get into some of the news that you may not have seen. We have a lot of local crime stories. We have a lot of contributors across the globe. There's a lot of world news. We even get into some of the frivolous stuff.
Dispatch Radio, Saturday mornings at 8 on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Starting a nonprofit corporation is serious business. It goes beyond your desire to help people and make needed changes in the world. There are laws and regulations governing how you organize and operate your nonprofit. We can help you get started right. We'll get your nonprofit incorporated and apply for your 501c3 tax-exempt status. Let us provide you service for a change. Call toll-free 877-919-0496, 877-919-0496, or visit consultgeorgenow.com today.
Spectrum 360 with Mark Skogman and Bruce Wright. We are back from the commercial break, and we've got a little more here for you from Greg Palast and some comments and etc. from some people. And we'll be also talking about a couple of anniversaries here. We're going to be talking about September 11th, 1973, and also the summer of 1963 when there was a bombing. So we're going to get back to Greg Palast, and I'm going to introduce him with this. Wow. Okay, here we go. More Greg Palast.
This is from the homeless shelter in State Street, Jack. We even let them lick the plates at the $500 plate. And there was another list. Here's what they were doing. They were sending letters. Paging is this. Bobby Kennedy and I were investigating this. Rolling Stone. They're sending letters to 700,000 voters and when those letters came back undelivered, they would challenge a vote, say these are fake voters from fake addresses. They sent them to homeless shelters. They sent them to apartment buildings in Miami with Jewish voters who they knew would not be around when they sent the letters in August because the snowbirds would go north. They were going after the elderly of Zion. And they were going after black students of black colleges sending letters, and another group. Because the race of a voter in Florida is written right on the registration form. They went after the dark-skinned voters who, at the U.S. Naval Base at Jacksonville, the U.S. Marines serving overseas, who they knew when the letter came, because it says do not forward, would go back to them. They challenged the rights of minority Marines to vote in 2004. Okay? And go to Iraq, lose your vote, or maybe your life, and the mission accomplished. 2004. That's not all. We think you're done with purchase, saw that number 181,000. That's not a fantasy number. That's the exact number of people that Rick Scott last week began purging from the voter rolls of Florida. 181,000 illegal aliens. People like Jose Hernandez. There was once a guy named Jose Hernandez, believe it or not, who was deported. So every Jose Hernandez in Florida loses their vote. And I said, well, wait a minute. I called the Attorney General. My God, these are criminals. You get caught voting, and you're not an American citizen, you automatically go to jail. There's never been a case where someone hasn't gone to jail, they got caught. You go to jail, and then you get automatically deported. I said, how many of those 181,000 have got? I said, well, come on, you got their addresses, you got their names, they show up to vote. Why, how many of you busted? How the jails must be filled? He said, well, one. Actually found two, but one was an active duty Marine serving in Afghanistan who hadn't yet received the citizenship papers, and his commander had registered him along with him. The other was a Austrian Republican. I won't say who. That's true, an Austrian Republican. That's it. But 181,000 people, almost all of them Hispanic Americans, would lose their vote. Then, hanging chads, you thought that was all over with in Florida? Ohio, talk to Bob Petrakis, okay? In Ohio, 2004, more hanging chads than were in Florida because of punch cards. I know you're worried about computer voting in Florida. It was the hanging chads, baby, that was a tremendous amount of vote, unbelievable vote loss. You want to know? That's called spoiled votes, by the way, hanging chads. It's part of the game, overvotes, unvotes. Now, wait a minute, I said, spoiled votes, there are 1,451,116 spoiled votes in the last election. I said, how do you spoil votes? Leave them out of the fridge? No, it's like, the hanging chads, etc. But the question is, whose vote is spoiled? Whose chad gets hung? I know we all saw, I just like every bad reporter went to Palm Beach and saw, we had our pina coladas where we're filming, the chicks in bikinis, that was, the butterfly ballot. Okay, but you know what? You go to Gadsden County where 1 in 6 votes is thrown in the garbage can, blackest of 67 counties in Florida. Your chance of losing your vote through spoilage, okay, is 900% higher if you're black than you're white. That's the United States Civil Rights Commission analysis. 900% higher if you're black than you're white. And 2012, I go to Ohio for Democracy Now! And I'm with Souls to the Polls. I'm following a Baptist church to vote. There used to be dozens, Bob, dozens of voting places for early voting. Black people vote early because you remember what happened in 2004, right? And they waited for 8 hours in the race and they don't know, so they all go early to the polls. So what they did was they solved that problem. They have dozens of early voting stations. Now, 1 per county, 1 for Cleveland, 1 for Dayton. I was in the Dayton line. 80,000 people voted on a single day in one place because they were ordered to. But when I say voted, I don't know if they voted. Because you know what happened? I waited in line 5 hours with the people from the church. Okay? With the church group. They waited. No one get out of line. No one. I didn't see a single person. Okay? And then they got to a room, and they didn't go to a polling place. Because they ordered the removal, the closure of the polling booths. Instead, you went into a room, and they gave you a request for an absentee ballot. Oh. Now, these people were at the voting clerk's office, county clerk. They weren't absent from anything. What was absent was democracy. They got an absentee ballot. So, a request for an absentee ballot, and then an absentee ballot. And I go, what the hell is going on? So it's in the middle. I called Bob, and these are the worst things. He said, this can't be. I said, Bob, just sit there. I got there. I got to Columbus at 1 in the morning. Got out of bed. Well, actually, he wasn't even in bed. He was working away. So it was 1 in the morning. And I said, Bob, look at this. Look at this. I'm going to have one with me. Absentee ballot request. And then they were given, from the request that they were accepted, they got the absentee ballot to fill out. Why? The answer is, let me give you this number, 488,136 absentee ballots were disqualified. 500,000 ballots. You know what? Don't go postal. You say, oh, God, I don't want to vote on a computer, so I'll mail in my ballot. So the guys are going to steal your vote. Instead, you just hand them your ballot and expect them to count it. Oh, they'll be. Now, how many votes actually get counted? Do you know what? Okay, other than the state of Oregon, do you know if your vote's been counted when you mail it in? Do you have any idea? You should know. The state of Oregon, that you can find out. And now, why doesn't your vote get counted if it's absentee? Well, you saw my mom. She wrote in a candidate's name. Jill, you'll love this, Madam President. She wrote in the candidate saying, Donna Fry won as mayor of San Diego, won the race. And then the Republican official said, wait a minute. We're going back to us. She won as a write-in candidate, can you imagine, for mayor of San Diego by several thousand votes. And then they went back and they said, wait a minute. We're going to look at each of those write-in votes. And they didn't add that E at the end of her name. Out. She agreed that the one that said surfer chick, she's famous. Blonde, to go out. Is there a lot? But the people like my parents didn't, and my lawyer's sister, didn't fill in the bubble next. You have not only fill in the candidate's name, you have to fill in a bubble next to it. And if you put an X, you lost your vote. This is what's happened. And so they took away the race from her. Now, the question is, okay, when I got number 5.9 million votes, that's, if our prayers come true, that was in the analysis. I used to do stats. That's the analysis of the number of votes that were illegally lost in 2008 election. It was worse than 12. Some of the worst elections we've had. And what's coming up, 100, you just started 5 states already with the ID laws, etc. Now, absentee ballots, spoiled ballots. There are 9 caging, purging. There are 9 ways to steal a vote. So this book is called Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, How to Steal an Election in 9 Easy Steps. It's also about the Koch brothers and their buck buddies. See, no one steals votes to win elections. They steal votes to steal the money. David Koch ran for governor of Kansas as a Democrat. Okay? Don't forget, okay? It's not about party, okay? By the way, you can learn about what their role is in the Excel pipeline in this film, because you heard Kennedy, there's something you can do about it. Well, I'll tell you the first thing you're going to do about it is 9 ways to steal the vote. Actually, the lines that when you saw those lines, I was walking on the hours of lines. Who was in those lines? Oh, the Pew Charitable Foundation. They said Florida only had an average 20 minutes of vote time. What's everyone complain about? Oh, well, let's just look at that's if you include the white weight. If I took a film in Ohio, I was waiting in line 5 hours for the black voters, so I decided, well, what does it look like in a white voting station? How long did I have to wait? I didn't have to wait. In fact, they came out with a cup of coffee. They said, come in. The black people were waiting in a cold garage. If you were a white voter, they had more poll workers and stations than they had voters. Okay, now, and that's what I want to talk to you about. And I saw it was a great image for the organization here to have it was a black hand and a white hand together. Can I see the black hands here? Yeah. Well, okay, we've got a problem. Okay, it's not a South African cricket match, 1950, guys. Okay. And then I go over the souls to the polls, and when I arrive, we now have a white person. Okay, I have nothing against white people. Both my parents are white. Okay, but here's the thing. Okay, I go to the church, I go to Reverend Jackson. How can we recreate the alliance? I said, you know, the Black-White Alliance. I said, well, Jesse, how about inviting some people for dinner? You have to give up the vegan thing for a night. But, okay, we have to break some silence here. There's a lot of concentration here on things that do threaten white voters, like computer voting. But you have to remember, if you're a black person, you don't get to vote anyway. You don't get to vote. Those computers were like, that would be like us spending the night at the Ritz. When those black voters came in, they saw those computer machines, and they weren't allowed to touch them. They got absentee ballot requests. Then when they weren't allowed that, they were given something called provisional ballots. Provisional ballots. We had, in the last election cycle, where they kept the record, let's see, I just want to look at this number myself here. Oh, yeah, we had, 767,023 provisional ballots, 750,000 provisional ballots that were thrown away. People voted, and their ballots were rejected. What, they're criminals illegally voting? Go arrest them. No, because I went to one Indian reservation, okay, with David Iglesias, who was an attorney, the U.S. attorney, who was, by the way, he was told to look for vote fraud, and he found it. He found that the elections officials are taking away the votes of Hispanic and Indian people. So Karl Rove said, oh my God, he found illegal voters, so they fired him. What they said is you're supposed to go find not the people stealing votes, you're supposed to find the victims and arrest them. And he said to me, they literally wanted me to arrest George Bush and Karl Rove. Karl Rove wanted him to arrest innocent voters. He says, I can't find it. I've looked all over the Masons, give me these stupid cagey lists. There's no illegal voters here. And they said, arrest some anyway. I kid you not. He said, this is the United States, not the Soviet Union. They said, oh, well, we'll let them go later. He says, you're going to arrest people for crimes you know they didn't commit? He wouldn't do that. They fired him. Okay, and they replaced one of the U.S. prosecutors with a guy named Tim Griffin. who was the guy who made up the caging list for Karl Rove. And where is he now? I exposed him, and he was in tears crying, that British reporter, oh, I lost my job. He's in the United States Congress today as the chief sponsor of the bill for the XL Keystone Pipeline. He got there by one way. Who in the world would take a totally discredited politician, Karl Rove's assistant, caught red-handed in corruption and vote theft? How could he get into office as a four-letter word, K-O-C-H? They gave him $167,000. Okay? For $167,000, a congressman will wash your car with their tongue. Okay? So that's how Tim Griffin got there, and the first thing they said is, where's our pipe? Oh, and by the way, the first extension of the Keystone Pipeline was built and immediately cracked and destroyed an entire part of Tim Griffin's district. And he was just in the paper last week saying, they're not doing anything about this pipeline that cracked in my district. He's still on the Koch payroll as their guy.
What's his district? Where is it?
Okay, in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, that's how it works. It is not about stealing votes. It's about stealing the treasury. It's about stealing your government. It's not partisan. Okay? When David Iglesias and I went out the Indian reservation, the Indians all lost their votes because they said, oh, you're not citizens. They were Americans before there was America. They were not citizens, so they gave them provisional ballots. It's okay, provisional ballots, but provisional ballots, and they threw them all out because they didn't use the right envelopes because the officials gave them the wrong envelopes. And Iglesias busted this game. It was Democrats who did that to the Indians, who were Democrats, all of them. You can't shoot an arrow on an Indian reservation without hitting a Democrat. I mean, that's how it is. But why? The answer is because there's a uranium mine that the Native Americans are trying to eliminate because it was poisoning their fields. They're killing their kids. And they said, we don't want this, we're going to vote against it. Suddenly the Democratic Party couldn't handle it. They didn't want no Indians in their party.
We're going to have to ask you guys to start wrapping it up. We got to get the building closed up by 6 o'clock, so I got about 10 minutes.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. That's a good point. So we got to wrap it up. We're going to break the silos. One way we're going to do it, Bob talked about, we need something, smart, humorous, here's what we're going to do. That film, Billionaires and Ballot Bands, this is produced by you. It's an experiment in citizen journalism, doing it with Bobby Kennedy and others. Look, what we're going to do is you go to www.gregpalast.com, www.gregpalast.com, okay? And there, individually, but especially if you have organizations, sign on. You'll see at the back of the book a whole bunch of progressive organizations that are signing on. I want your information. I want your organization to be part of this. You be the producers. Yes, the NSA for our list, but we need you. Okay, this is going to be, instead of moguls out of Hollywood, it's going to be you and me, and we're going to put this film out. It'll break the silos. It will have the digitizing, the presto changeo, magical voting machines, but we'll also have the purges. We'll also have the spoilage of the black votes. We'll have the hung chads, you name it. It's all the ways that they steal and who steals it. It won't just be how they steal, but who it is. And I have actually, believe it or not, I had a long discussion many, many years ago. I certainly forgot about it. One of the Koch brothers is really upset with his other brother. It's a hell of a family. And I had a long conversation where he laid it all out, and I have it on tape. Never put it out before. So we're going to do that now. And I need you. And by the way, if you want my foundation, this was not by my pig publisher, Penguin. My very nice big publisher. But this is put out by my not-for-profit foundation. You can get a copy of the book of one of my previous DVDs over there. There's a stack of them. And I want you to go to gregpalast.com. Make sure that you participate. You want to get the book, go ahead. Let's talk about these ideas. Bust the silos. And thank you. Bless you. This is the beginning. This is the end of the meeting. It's the beginning of the movement. Thank you.
GregPalast.com.
Yes. There you have Greg Palast at the Democracy Convention in Madison, Wisconsin, at the Madison Area Technical College building. That was on Saturday, the 10th of August. 2013. Great speech there. It was
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
What? I am broadcasting. How dare you say that? But let's have a little. We're going to have a little round of applause for Greg Palast.
Thank you very much. And that round of applause goes out to our good buddy Jay, who texted us, and my good friend Patricia, who is the licensed massage therapist that we mentioned at the beginning of the program, and certainly encourage everyone to patronize any of the groups that we mentioned at the beginning of the program. Now we're going to go to a segment. Mark's going to talk a little bit about what happened September 11th, 40 years ago, and then I will be talking shortly thereafter about the Birmingham incident that happened some 50 years ago in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yes, this is Spectrum 360 with Mark Skogman and Bruce Wright. And we have a couple of anniversaries we want to recognize before we wrap up the program in about 6 minutes. And the first one is 11th of September, 1973. It's the country of Chile. Salvador Allende is elected president of Chile. And the United States, the instigation of Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger, encouraged a coup through the CIA to overthrow the democratically elected government of Chile because Salvador Allende was a socialist. Now, our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence states that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that people have certain inalienable rights, I believe I read, and among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What part of life and liberty do we not understand from our own documents when we support the overthrow of democratically elected governments, whether we like them or not, in other countries? What happened on that day was the fact that Augusto Pinochet took power through a fascist coup, and there were hundreds of thousands of people killed across the country over the next many years that he were in power, and especially in the next 5 days. And what happened was a man named Victor Jara, who was a famous musician, folk music musicologist, and a brilliant theater director who was born in poverty, lower class, in a rural area of Chile, and rose to prominence through his skills and through hard work and through being an exceptional talent to being a famous person in Chile. And 5 days later, on today's date, the 16th of September, 1973, he was taken to the Chile Stadium, which was like a large enclosed gymnasium where they had sporting events, and there were people held there for 5 to 6 to 7 days. Soldiers would come in and shoot over their heads. There were people wounded by ricocheting bullets, and Victor Jara was singled out, and he was taken downstairs, brutally tortured, and then within hours, he was shot, I believe, 41 times. And it was a horrific crime, and he was just one of hundreds to thousands that were killed. Also, there were large massacres in the Santiago Stadium, the national stadium, the large outdoor soccer stadium that day. And we were just taking this time to remember the other September 11th, 1973, when that horrific crime happened to Victor Jara. At the Feathered Serpent Gallery Saturday night, this last Saturday, 2 days ago, there was a great event where they screened a great documentary film about Victor Jara's life, and we remembered that coup that our country helped sponsor that ended democratic rule for many years in the country of Chile. And it was a great event. The operators of the Feathered Serpent Gallery, Linda and Mauricio Vasquez, are friends of the program, and they sponsored this great event with this great documentary film about the life of Victor Jara, and we want people to know about that. And there's another anniversary as well, which Bruce is going to speak to you about, and that was the anniversary of the Birmingham church bombing where 4 young black children were killed. Bruce, take it away.
Yeah, on September 15th, which is a Sunday, yesterday, it was to the date, the 50th anniversary of probably one of the most horrendous acts of terrorism. And that's the word it should be called. On Democracy Now! Today, Amy Goodman interviewed Angela Davis. Angela Davis is a former Black Panther. She also happened to live in Birmingham at that time and knew the other children that were killed. In fact, they were friends of hers. 4 African-American young women, young girls between the ages of 11 and 14 were brutally slaughtered, as well as many others injured at 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, September 15th, 1963. And it was a horrific date that should rightly be called domestic terrorism. And it happened during the height of the civil rights movement, on the heels of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where Dr. King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. And it is something that's got to be remembered, and remembered so that it's never repeated again. This has been Spectrum 360, and we want to thank all of our sponsors. And I also want to encourage everyone here to check us out on the web. That's tantalk1340.com. All these shows are podcasted. Please tell your friends about it. Next week, we have some amazing things again for you to share and to listen to. And I am your host, along with my co-host, Mark Skogman. I am Bruce Wright. Take it away, Mark.
That's all, folks.
Yes, we will have more Spectrum 360 next week. Remember, AM 1340 on Monday nights at 11 p.m. And the podcast available all the time, tantalk1340.com. They're there all the time. Just look for Spectrum 360, click on podcast, Spectrum 360, and you got it.
Yes, and don't forget, this Saturday there is a UN Peace Vigil at MacDill and Dale Mabry from 4:30 to 6 p.m.
WTAN, Clearwater, Tampa Bay. WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay. WZHR, Zephyr Hills, Tampa Bay. Listen,